My name is Isabella, and what I'm about to tell you happened to me 5 years ago in coastal Colombia, where the Caribbean meets ancient spiritual traditions that most people from other countries don't fully understand. I've debated sharing this story for years, but recent events have convinced me that some experiences need be told, if only to warn others about forces that exist beyond our everyday understanding. It started on a humid Friday night in Cartagena. I was 26, working as a marketing coordinator for a tourism company, and finally feeling like I had my life together after a messy breakup the year before. My friends Lucia and Carmen had dragged me out to Club Havana, insisting I needed to stop dwelling on my ex and start living again. The music was pulsing through my chest as we danced on the crowded floor, salsa rhythms mixing with modern reggaeton. That's when I first saw him, tall, with deep brown eyes and a kind of confident smile that made my heart skip. He moved through the crowd like he owned the place. And when our eyes met across the dance floor, everything else seemed to fade away. His name was Diego, and he was from Santa Marta, about 2 hours up the coast. He worked in marine conservation. He told me, spending his days protecting sea turtle nests and coral reefs. There was something magnetic about the way he spoke, his voice deep and melodic, with a coastal accent that was different from mine. We danced until the club closed, and when he asked for my WhatsApp, I didn't hesitate. "I don't really do social media," he said with a sheepish grin. "I prefer real connections, not all that digital noise." At the time, I found this refreshing. So many guys my age were obsessed with Instagram and posting every moment of their lives. Diego seemed different, more authentic. Our conversation started innocently enough. Good morning messages, photos of sunsets from his beach, stories about the marine life he encountered at work. He was intelligent, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. Within a few weeks, we were talking every day. The first time he visited me in Cartagena, I was nervous and excited. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a small bag and a bouquet of white flowers that he said reminded him of me. We spent the weekend exploring the old city, eating at small restaurants in Getsemani, and talking until sunrise on my apartment balcony overlooking the Caribbean. "I've never met anyone like you, Isabella," he told me as we watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You have this light about you that makes everything better." But Diego was careful about labels. Whenever I brought up the possibility of being exclusive or making our relationship official, he would deflect. "I care about you so much," he would say, "but I'm not ready for anything serious right now. My last relationship really messed me up, and I need to take things slow." His last relationship, that was with a woman named Esperanza, from what Diego told me. They had been together for 6 years, practically married, but she had been possessive and unstable. She was still in his life peripherally because she worked at the Marine Research Station where he had his first job, and her father owned a boat repair shop where Diego still took his work equipment for maintenance. She has some unusual beliefs. Diego would say whenever Esperanza came up in conversation, "She's into a lot of spiritual stuff that I don't really understand. Santeria, Palomani, things like that. Her whole family is involved in it." Despite his reluctance to commit, Diego and I fell into a rhythm. He would come to Cartagena every other weekend, or I would take the bus to Santa Marta to stay with him. We took trips to nearby islands, went on hikes in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and spent countless hours talking about everything and nothing. But there were these periods, sometimes a week, sometimes longer, where Diego would just disappear. No messages, no calls, nothing. Then he would resurface as if nothing had happened, with vague excuses about being busy with work or dealing with family issues. During one of these silent periods, about 8 months into our situationship, I made a decision that I now recognize as the beginning of everything falling apart. I decided to look up Esperanza on Facebook. It wasn't hard to find her. Her profile was public, and she posted frequently. Photos of beaches, spiritual quotes, images of altars with candles and offerings. Her mother's profile was even more revealing. Carmen Rosa Aguirre was clearly a practitioner of Afro-Caribbean religions, posting photos of elaborate rituals, ceremonial items, and what looked like consultations with spiritual leaders. One post from Carmen Rosa particularly caught my attention. It was a photo of a small cloth bag filled with herbs, accompanied by a caption in Spanish that roughly translated to, "For those who need to bind a wandering heart and bring back lost love. The spirits know what the heart desires." I screenshotted the post and sent it to my friend Lucia, who had grown up in a family that practiced Santeria. "Isabella, be careful," she warned me over coffee the next day. "That looks like Trabajito, spiritual work. If this woman is doing this kind of thing for her daughter, it's serious." "But Diego doesn't believe in any of this stuff," I protested. "He's always said it's just superstition." Lucia gave me a look that I'll never forget. "Believing doesn't matter, mi amor. If the work is done properly, it affects you whether you believe or not." A few days later, Diego finally messaged me, apologizing for being out of touch and asking if he could come visit. When he arrived, he seemed different, more distant, distracted. He kept checking his phone, which was unusual for him. That night, as we were lying in bed, his phone buzzed with a notification. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. "Esperanza, why is she texting you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Diego grabbed his phone quickly. "It's nothing. She probably needs something for work." But I had seen enough of the message preview to know it wasn't about work. "I dreamed about you last night," it had said. The next morning, I decided to create an Instagram account for Diego, suggesting it might help promote the conservation work his organization was doing. He was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. "Fine, but you'll have to set it up," he said. "I don't understand how these things work." I spent the afternoon creating his profile, uploading some photos I had taken of him, and following accounts related to marine conservation. Diego barely paid attention to it, just letting me handle everything. 3 weeks later, during another one of Diego's disappearing acts, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a post that made my hand shake. Esperanza had posted a photo of herself and Diego sitting in a car, her head resting on his shoulder. The caption read, "Gracias a los ancestros por traer de vuelta lo que es mío. Thanks to the ancestors for bringing back what is mine." I immediately called Diego. No answer. I sent multiple messages. Nothing. Finally, 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking haggard and confused. "We need to talk," I said, showing him the Instagram post. "I don't know why she posted that," he said, running his hands through his hair. "I went to see her because she said it was an emergency, something about her father being sick. When I got there, she was acting strange, talking about dreams and signs, saying the spirits had told her we belonged together. And you just went along with it?" "I don't know, Isabella. I felt confused, like I wasn't thinking clearly. She gave me this tea to drink, said it would help with the stress I'd been feeling, and afterwards everything felt foggy." As I looked at him, I realized something disturbing. Over the past few months, Diego had started expressing opinions and interests that seemed to mirror things I had seen on Esperanza's social media. He had suddenly become interested in certain musicians she followed, started using phrases that appeared in her posts, even mentioned wanting to visit places she had recently posted about. "Diego," I said carefully, "do you remember telling me last month that you wanted to learn about your Wayo heritage?" He nodded. "And 2 weeks ago, when you said you were thinking about getting a tattoo of a sea turtle with geometric patterns?" Another nod. I showed him Esperanza's Instagram, scrolling back through her posts. There was a post about connecting with indigenous roots, followed weeks later by a photo of a similar tattoo design she had shared from a spiritual artist. Diego's face went white as he realized what I was showing him. "This is impossible," he whispered. "I don't even follow her on here. I barely use Instagram." "But she follows you," I pointed out. "She likes every single photo immediately after I post them." That night, Diego stayed over, but he was restless, tossing and turning. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. "I keep having the same dream," he said without looking at me. "Esperanza is there and her mother, and they're speaking to me in a language I don't understand, but somehow I know what they're saying. They tell me that I made promises I need to keep, that I belong with them." I had been doing research since discovering Carmen Rosa's posts, reading about Afro-Caribbean spiritual practices and their use in matters of love and binding. Everything I learned made me more convinced that Diego was under some kind of spiritual influence. "I want to help you," I told him. "I think Esperanza and her mother have done some kind of spiritual work to keep you connected to them, and I think I know how to break it." Diego was skeptical, but he was also frightened by his dreams and the gaps in his memory. What would we have to do? I had been in contact with a spiritual cleaner named Mama Luz, an elderly woman from Palenque who specialized in removing unwanted spiritual influences. She had given me specific instructions for a limpieza, a spiritual cleansing. "We need to cleanse your energy and your space," I explained. "Remove any spiritual ties that aren't serving your highest good." The ritual took place the following weekend. Mama Luz came to Diego's apartment in Santa Marta, bringing with her a suitcase full of herbs, candles, and other items I didn't recognize. She spoke very little during the process, working in silence as she burned copal incense and sprinkled blessed water throughout the apartment. She had Diego strip down and stand in the center of the living room while she brushed his entire body with branches of ruda and eucalyptus, speaking in what sounded like a mixture of Spanish and an African language I couldn't identify. The smell of the herbs was overwhelming, earthy and bitter. "This man has been very heavily worked." Mama Luz told me quietly while Diego was washing off the herbs in the shower. "Someone's been feeding his mind, planting thoughts and desires that are not his own. The work is old, maybe years old, and it is strong." She left us with instructions to burn white candles for 7 days and to dispose of anything in the apartment that had come from Esperanza or her family. That night, we both slept more peacefully than we had in weeks. But at exactly 3:33 a.m., Diego woke up screaming. He was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror, pointing at the corner of the room. "There's someone there," he gasped. "A woman in white, but her face is wrong." I looked where he was pointing but saw nothing. "She's gone now," he said, but his hands were shaking. "Isabella, what did you do to me?" From that moment, everything changed. Diego became convinced that I had somehow cursed him or opened a door to something dangerous. Despite my explanations about the cleansing being meant to help him, he was terrified of me and anything related to spiritual practices. "I don't know what you're involved in," he said the next morning as he packed his bag, "but I want no part of it." He left, and I didn't hear from him for 3 months. During those months, I monitored Esperanza's social media obsessively, expecting to see evidence that she and Diego had reunited. Instead, I saw a post about her feeling abandoned and betrayed, cryptic messages about people who didn't appreciate the gifts they were given. Through mutual friends, I learned that Diego had started dating someone else entirely, a marine biologist named Patricia, who worked in an aquarium in Barranquilla. This actually gave me hope. If he was free to choose someone new, maybe the cleansing had worked after all. A year passed before Diego contacted me again. He sent a simple message. "Can we talk? I owe you an apology." We met at a small cafe in Cartagena's historic center, the same neighborhood where we had walked on his first visit. Diego looked older, more serious, but also more at peace than I had seen him in our entire relationship. "I need to tell you something," he said after we ordered coffee. "Everything you said about Esperanza was true." Over the next 2 hours, Diego told me a story that chilled me to the bone. After our relationship ended, he had tried to completely avoid Esperanza, but she kept finding ways to insert herself into his life. She would show up at his workplace with her father, claiming they needed to discuss boat repairs. She would appear at restaurants where he was eating, insisting it was coincidence. She would send him messages late at night, saying she was worried about his spiritual well-being. "I started having dreams about her every single night," Diego told me. "In the dreams, she would tell me that you had cursed me, that you were jealous and trying to destroy my life with dark magic. She said she was trying to protect me." These dreams became so vivid and frequent that Diego began to believe them. He broke up with Patricia and started spending time with Esperanza again, convinced that she was the only one who could help him. "The strangest part," Diego said, "was that I felt like I was watching myself make these decisions, but I couldn't stop. It was like being a passenger in my own life." Everything came to a head when Esperanza asked him to move in with her and her mother. They wanted to perform a permanent binding ceremony, she explained, to ensure that no one could ever separate them again. "That's when I finally understood what you had been trying to tell me," Diego said. "I realized that every major decision I had made regarding Esperanza felt like it was coming from outside myself." Diego had confronted Esperanza directly, demanding to know if she had done spiritual work to influence him. She had broken down and confessed everything. For years, even while they were dating, Esperanza had been collecting Diego's hair from his brush, pieces of clothing, even taking photos of him while he slept. Her mother had taught her how to use these items in rituals designed to keep him emotionally bound to her, to make him feel restless and unhappy with anyone else. "She showed me a jar buried in her backyard," Diego said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "It had my hair, my fingernail clippings, photos of us together, and things I don't even want to describe. She said her mother had told her it would make sure I always came back to her, no matter who else I tried to be with." The most disturbing part was that Esperanza genuinely believed she was helping Diego by keeping him tied to her. In her worldview, their connection was destined by the spirits, and anyone who tried to separate them was working against divine will. She said you were evil for trying to break what the ancestors had blessed. Diego continued. "But after Patricia and I broke up, I started remembering things more clearly. I remembered how happy I was with you, how natural it felt, how I never had to question my own thoughts and feelings." Diego had demanded that Esperanza and her mother reverse whatever they had done. The process had taken several weeks and involved destroying the buried jar, burning various items, and performing what Carmen Rosa called a spiritual release. "The night they finished the reversal ritual," Diego said, "I had the most vivid dream. I saw you standing in a garden, and you looked at me with such sadness. You said, 'I try to help you, but you couldn't see past your fear.' When I woke up, it was like a fog had lifted from my mind. We talked until sunset, walking along the city walls as the Caribbean turned gold in the fading light. Diego apologized repeatedly for not believing me, for blaming me for spiritual torment, for wasting the genuine connection we had shared. I understand now why you did the cleansing," he said. "You were trying to free me from something I didn't even realize was controlling me. I'm sorry I was too scared and ignorant to see it. I forgave him because I understood that he had been a victim in all of this. But I also knew that too much had happened for us to simply pick up where we left off. I care about you, Diego," I told him as we prepared to part ways. "But I think we both need to move forward separately. What happened between us was real, but it was also tainted by forces beyond our control." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I just want you to know that the time we spent together, The real time when I was myself, those were some of the happiest months of my life. 2 years later, I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who has never been spiritually manipulated by an ex-girlfriend. Diego is also doing well for what I hear. He moved to Costa Rica for work and is apparently thriving in his new environment. But this experience taught me something important about the intersection of love, spirituality, and free will. There are forces in this world that most people don't understand or acknowledge, practices that can influence human behavior in ways that seem impossible to those who haven't experienced them. I'm not here to convince anyone that spiritual work is real or to promote any particular belief system. But I am here to say that if someone you care about seems to be under the influence of manipulative spiritual practices, don't dismiss it as superstition. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is help someone break free from invisible chains, even if they can't see them yet. And if you find yourself in a relationship where you constantly question your own thoughts and feelings, where you feel drawn to someone despite your better judgment, where you make decisions that don't feel like your own, it might be worth considering whether all the influences in your life are benevolent. Trust your instincts. Trust your friends. And remember that real love doesn't require spiritual manipulation to sustain itself. The shadows that bind us can be broken, but only when we're brave enough to acknowledge that they exist. As for Esperanza, from what I understand, she has moved on to someone new. I can only hope that she has learned to love without trying to control, to connect without trying to bind. But that's her journey to make. Mine led me to understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is setting someone free, including yourself.